Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yesterday we saw that Arjuna, Lord Krishna started by saying that this knowledge is not something which I created, in the sense that this is not the first time that this knowledge has been imparted. There is a whole long tradition, okay? And somehow he says, I am the one who started this whole tradition. Okay? Now, so Arjuna is asking a very relevant question, and he says, but you were just born right now. How come you are telling me that you gave this knowledge to this Vivaswan and Vivaswan passed it on to Manu and Manu to Ikshvaku? So how is it possible? Okay. So in reply to this question, Lord Krishna gives the understanding of what is an avatar. So today we will see that. So it is verse 5 of chapter 4 of Gita. It says, now in response to Arjuna's question, it says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna tamyaham veda sarvani natvam veda parantava. Do you want all to chant? You like to chant?
Yes.
Yes? Yes? Okay. Let's try. Okay. I will do half and you try to follow me. Okay? Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam veda parantava. One good thing is that since Gita is not Veda, you can chant it the way you want. Okay? So there is no swaras. If you go to the no swaras. So any style is fine, but this is the style that we use. It's Anushtuk meter, so it has a certain break. Here he says that in fact now he reveals how Krishna is different from everybody else. Okay? So here the way he starts talking about it is, he says, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tamacharjuna. Many births have taken place for you and for me and for everyone else. Okay? But what is a jiva? He says, but you don't remember, okay? But I do remember. Okay? And that is what makes you. Krishna was not just Mr. Krishna, and he was what we call avatar. So we will first see, you are born because of what we saw in the morning class, because of your causes, right? And the causes are in form of your punya and papa. Okay? Now this punya and papa also is as long as you don't really know your true nature. As Rashna was saying in the morning, that actually what Upanishad wants to show us is, I am Brahman, I am limitless. But you don't think of yourself as limitless, you think of yourself as this little individual, okay? A doer, and you perform actions and you accrue the result of that action. Okay? So So therefore, this particular birth that you have taken is a result of, out of this sanchita karma, there are some prarabdha karma which have what? Come into being for you to go through experiences of your life. So that means that there is a causal body, but the reason that there is a causal body is because there is ignorance about what? One's true nature. Okay? So therefore, how do I know that there is ignorance about one's true nature? In fact, when you are born ignorant. You don't need to hear from Gita that there is ignorance. When you are born, you are ignorant about the world and you are also equally ignorant about yourself. Okay? You have some notion of I, but if I really ask you to define that I, you don't even know what it is. Okay? So that means there is ignorance about the world and also ignorance about the self. As the life proceeds, you are also given tools to remove those ignorance. Okay? From your standpoint, there is ignorance, but from the standpoint of all knowledge, is there ignorance? Before Einstein discovered time and space is relative, from the standpoint of human being, it was ignorance. But from the standpoint of how the all knowledge operated, it already knew, right, that the time and space is relative. Because as Neeru was saying in the morning, this is how all knowledge manifests in the universe. Okay? So that means no human being creates any knowledge. A knowledge is already there.
Discovers.
A human being only discovers knowledge, discovers realities which are already existing. Okay? So this is what he says. Your birth is due to ignorance of what is the reality. Okay? And as you make a mistake about what is the nature of I, you have accumulated all these karmas. Okay? And you are coming into being to experience the result of these karmas that are in your account. Okay? So this is what we call, as Surya said, due to ignorance, when the person thinks I am only this much, this entity, then the person has three different kinds of what we call I. One is the physical body, the other one is the subtle body, and the third is the causal body. Okay? So all three are due to actually the ignorance about what my true nature is. Okay? So this entity, everybody keeps asking, what is this entity which actually goes from one body to the other? Okay? So this entity which has ignorance about the self is, we have a name for it, and that entity is called Jiva. Okay? A Jiva by definition is that it is ignorant about the nature of oneself, and due to that ignorance, it takes oneself to be this limited entity when in fact it is much more than that. Okay? Being that limited entity, it engages in the world for one's fulfillment. It performs actions. The actions are, as we said, are of different types, and that person comes back, okay, to experience the result of one's action. So Jiva is the one, due to ignorance, it is connected to three different types of body. The physical body, the subtle body, and the causal body. So Jiva is an entity which is nothing but this I, but due to ignorance, right, there is a mistake, and the mistake continues till the time that you discover what is the reality of oneself. Okay? So this is how everybody's birth takes place. About how is it taking place? The mind is what? Veiled. There is a veil of ignorance. That's why you don't know things. Okay? Now, Krishna's birth, is it exactly the same? Is he subject to punya and papa, and is he born due to ignorance?
No.
No. Right? So here he says, yeah. So this is what he says, that there is his beings, right? There is this all knowledge and all power, okay, which follows a certain laws. Here we say the laws of what? Karma, to give birth to all these different individuals. Okay? Now, which follows what? Your own account. But the same all knowledge and all power can also create one form, which is not because of karma, which is not because of the ignorance and the karma, but it just comes into manifestation, because if it can create all these variety, it can certainly create one more form. So this manifestation that happens, which does not follow the empirical rule of ignorance and karma account, is what we call avatar. Okay. So this is what he says, and this is exactly what he says, that from your understanding you have taken many births, but a human mind doesn't have all the information about all the previous births. So many people ask this question that, if I was born so many times, how come I don't have memory of that? Thank God you don't have memory of that. Oh my God, you will be so confused because you will have millions of your own fathers, right? Now you will be so confused who is your father and what that father did and what that mother did and what that husband did and what that child did. So all these simultaneous, even today, this life is difficult to tackle. Now imagine you have the load of all the previous lives and all the previous relationships and all the previous problems that you had earlier. You will be a mess. It's a greatest blessing. It is the power of veiling which is belonging to all knowledge. Don't think that it is only something which is fooling you. It actually also comes as a blessing. In psychology, you have this whole thing of unconscious. Okay? Unconscious means as a child, right, some events occur which are very traumatic. And the child's buddhi is not well developed to actually process those events. So what? There is almost like a block. There is a veil. That veil is what? The unconscious. The unconscious actually you don't think that it is something bad. It is actually meant to protect the child at that given point in time. Because the child is not capable of processing that event. So it's a blessing. But what happens is that at some point in time, it sits there. The unconscious sits there. Okay? But then it sits there, it doesn't mean that it goes away. So therefore, unless as an adult you process it, okay, it will keep on interfering. As I was giving the example of a girl who was told that she was not wanted, then when she was at work, she felt that what? I don't deserve a promotion. That came from there. Okay? When she was interacting with her husband, she felt she was not wanted. The source was there. Okay? So that means whatever is in the unconscious, it keeps on manifesting. Until the time that you address it. The minute you address it, you've settled account. You no longer what? You don't succumb to its habitual ways of then first assessing things and then acting on that. Okay? So this is what we say, veiling power exists for what? From the standpoint of all knowledge, that veiling is given to you where you don't remember all your past births. Don't think that it is something which is a handicap, it's actually a blessing. Whatever is needed, Neeru keeps saying, I love that. Whatever is needed for you to solve this whole mystery of your existence is given to you here and now. You don't need any more information. If you have a right teacher, with whatever you can know right now, you can find out the truth of the whole thing. If you use all the capabilities that are given to you, what? Appropriately, adequately. Okay? So that means that this ignorance is somehow useful because it would create a problem if you knew all the information about your past birth. Okay? But what you can do is, in this birth, either, as Neeru was saying, you can accumulate good karmas and influence your sanchita karma in a way that you have better births, or you can do something even better. And that better is get out of this whole game of karma by knowing the reality. That also is given to you as a possibility. Okay? The highest possibility is, right? The better birth is still within, I think there is this Avni Puri. She is very nice. She said, yeah, there is this samsara. Within this samsara, there is what? Up and down and all the different positions and all. Good karma is what? Within samsara, it takes you to better places. It gives you relatively better bodies. It gives you relatively better circumstances. But you are still within the what? You are within the laws of punya, papa, karma, dharma. You are not out of it. Okay? But in this life also is the possibility to know the absolute truth that we will see later. Anybody can know it. Okay? And then you are out of this cycle of what we call cause and effect chain, which is what? Action and its result. Different bodies, what? Physical bodies, subtle bodies, and the causes what? Keep on, we not only we expand the causes, we also keep on accumulating more. So here he says that a human being is born not knowing all the past births. Okay? But this avatara by definition is that given form has come into being, okay, not following this normal empirical rule, which is what? Ignorance, which is ignorance based punya and papa. Yeah. So ignorance about one's true nature, who I am. And due to that ignorance, I take myself as an entity, one little entity, who engages in the world, okay, performs actions and accrues the result. Okay. But that all knowledge makes everybody what? Every other form follow the laws of dharma and karma, but it can manifest not subject to laws of dharma and karma, and is not due to ignorance. So you will then ask a question, but what is the need? Why that form is needed? Why does it have to come that all knowledge and all power has to come in a given form? Take a form which is not due to ignorance and not as a result of the account of punya and papa. Why? Why is that exception made? Sorry? That's written. Exactly. Yes, exactly.
When there's an imbalance.
Exactly. Both of you are right. And this is exactly now before that both of you have given the right answer, now he explains a little bit more about what is this. He presents himself as Ishvara. Okay, this is all knowledge and all power, which out of its own Maya has taken that form. Okay, which is not subject to ignorance and not subject to punya and papa. So we will see a little bit, we'll understand what is the term Maya, because it's a very commonly used term and you need to know what it means. Okay. So here,
just ignorance about reality.
Yes.
Absolute.
Yeah. See, because you start, in fact, you start your life thinking, as Shona was saying, that you are only this much, right? Now what is Mandukya doing? Making you see the world in a totally different light. Right? So you have come with ignorance about realities. Because you have a very limited view, you have a given way of looking at the world, which is a very partial view of looking at the world. So you have come with ignorance. Everybody has come with ignorance. Is it okay? So here he says, the next verse, which is 6th verse, it says, Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san prakritim swamadhishtaya sambhavamyatma mayaya. You can repeat her. Ajopi san avyayatma
Ajopi san avyayatma
bhutanam ishvaropi san
Bhutanam ishvaropi san
prakritim swamadhishtaya
Prakritim swamadhishtaya
sambhavamyatma mayaya.
Sambhavamyatma mayaya.
Okay, so here he explains, I will just translate what is written here and then I will explain to you what it means. Here he says, even though being one who is unborn, one whose knowledge does not wane, and also being the Lord of all beings, still wielding my own Prakriti, I as though come into being by my own creative power. Okay? So this is something that we saw. What is Ishvara? Ishvara we already luckily saw in Mandukya, so I will not spend so much time on it, right? You have to bring that knowledge. Otherwise what happens is that knowledge is, you think is something that you've studied in Mandukya, and in Gita you have to study something else. So now you have to bring that. Okay? What is Ishvara?
All knowledge.
All knowledge. Okay? Now that all knowledge we saw is what? Where is it? Everywhere. Okay? What does everywhere mean?
It percolates through every single thing.
All
The
pervading.
world, the whole.
Yeah, all pervading. And all pervading, if you use Mandukya, what does it
Through physical and the subtle.
Excellent. Okay? It pervades everything through physical, subtle, and through the causal. Right? The laws include the causal. Right? That means that we know everything. Otherwise, everything is so vague itself. Okay? So that means it is everywhere. Every subtle and physical is born because of causal. In that causal, what we saw, individual causal is what? Punya and Papa. Okay? So that means every physical and subtle manifestation has come into being following laws of karma. Okay? And other arrangement which is there in the universe, where there are not living beings, they also follow different laws. Laws of physics, laws of biology, laws of many different things. The laws of chemistry, every law is at work. Different laws are at work for the entire physical and subtle universe to be what it is. So these causes are what we call the causal. Okay? So this is what he is saying, that I am something, the all knowledge and all power, is it something which is born? What is born?
Which has a seed or
What is born is the physical body and mind. Is all knowledge and all power born? It was already there, because of which, what? The body is born. It's not born at the time of the body. This is why we talked about the cause of the universe. Did we see that? We saw that the cause of the universe are how many? The maker and the material. So if what the physical body is an effect, the cause has to what? Precede the effect. We saw that Ishvara, all knowledge, being the cause of the universe, from which came what? The time, the space, and every object in time and space. Okay. So that means it is the maker, all knowledge, but it is also not only the knowledge, it is also what? It is not only the maker, it is also the material. That means it is also manifesting it as everything else. Okay. So therefore, bodies are born, all knowledge was what? Because of which all the bodies are born. So this is why he says, I am Ajaha. Ajaha means unborn. All knowledge precedes. Yes? Got it? Okay. All knowledge, the creation has bodies, right? Before the bodies came into being, Ishvara was there or not?
Yes.
Yes, that's it. Bodies are born. Ishvara was before the bodies were born. Ajaha. Okay. Ajo Pisan Avyaya. Okay. Now, Avyaya Atma. As we saw that Avyaya does, when a physical body is born, okay, and it has its own this limitation, is Ishvara subject to that limitation? No. Why?
It is all encompassing. Means
Yeah.
it is everything.
It doesn't have the force.
Because Ishvara is there. This is just a part of that Ishvara. Ishvara anyway exists as whole.
Exactly. Ishvara exists as whole, but everything that happens to the part, is Ishvara subject to the suffering of each part? No. He has the right answer. What did you say?
It is independent of our.
We saw last time that there is a relation, when there is in relationship of Satyam and Mithya, whatever is Mithya, right? The Satyam of that does not take on the attribute of Mithya. You remember that? We saw that. Otherwise, Ishvara will become what? The accumulation of everybody's problem would be Ishvara. Sum total of everybody's problem will be Ishvara. Okay. While pervading the table, the wood does not take on the attributes of the table. Pervading it, it is free from it. This is what we call transcendence. Transcendence doesn't mean that it is somewhere else. Okay. All knowledge pervading your mind in form of making the neurons what they are, the chemicals what they are, the wiring what it is, pervading all of that, it is free from it. Okay. Just as your feelings that you have, the neurons pervading those are free from the feelings that you have. Okay. So that means Ishvara, even though it pervades everything, it is never affected by it. And this is what he is saying. I am Ajaha, I am Avyayaha. Don't think that I am subject because I pervade everything doesn't mean that I am subject to all the miseries. Otherwise, Ishvara would be the most miserable entity. Because I just have to go through my little misery. He has to go through the misery of a criminal. He has to go through a misery of a serial killer. He has to go through misery of an abuser. He has to go through misery of everyone.
Basically any emotion, joyous or...
Exactly. It's free. Absolutely. When any emotion, whether it is what we call positive or what we call negative, all knowledge is because of which ranges of emotions are possible, from the most positive to the most negative, itself is free from both. And logically, that is the only way you can look at Ishvara. If you attribute only the positive things to Ishvara, then there are so many negative, so-called negative emotions, then what will you attribute it to? Then you have to create another entity called devil. Then God, there is a fight between the God and the devil. You can't attribute, excellent point Shona. You can't attribute neither the negative nor the positive. It is all knowledge because of which ranges of emotions are possible. While those emotions are possible, itself is completely free from all. Because it's all knowledge. Okay? So this is where you understand it is avyaya. While all the changes are taking place, itself is what? Free from all the agonies or even joys that are happening, right, in the creation are free. Ishvara is free. Okay. So this is avyayatma. Bhutanam Ishvaropi San is the Ishvara because of which all the beings have come into being. Okay. Then Prakrutim Swamadrishtaya Sambhavami Atma Mayaya. Okay. Keeping all of us are subject to Prakriti. What is Prakriti? This Maya is what we call Prakriti. We have to understand a little bit more about Ishvara. Okay. Up to now, we have talked about Ishvara as all knowledge. All knowledge in Sanskrit is called Sarvajna. Jna is knowledge and Sarva means all knowledge, Sarvajna. Okay. Now, we also have to include that all knowledge, it manifested as the entire universe, it also must have what? The power to manifest as the whole universe. So this aspect of power is what we call Sarva Shaktiman. Sarva Shaktiman means that not only it has knowledge, but it also must have power to become the whole universe. Only knowledge is not enough. Okay? So this power is what we call Maya. The knowledge has the power to manifest. That power is what we call Maya Shakti. Okay? Maya does not mean illusion. Radhika keeps saying, I know, I've understood one thing, Maya is not an illusion. So, it's not an illusion, it means that there is a power to project on part of what? This reality. The projection power is twofold. One is what we call Vikshepa Shakti. Vikshepa Shakti is what? From this all knowledge comes what? Time, space, every object in time, space, all the minutest particles, the arrangement of those particles which make different objects, that whole power to manifest. This is what we call Big Bang. The whole universe has come about. Okay? The all knowledge has the power. What kind of, if it is all knowledge, what kind of power it must have?
All power.
All power. So we call Sarvajnaha Sarva Shaktiman Ishvara. Okay? In fact, we use, in English also people use these terms omniscient and omnipotent. They probably don't understand what they mean, but this is what it means, right? That there is this all knowledge and that it has all power to manifest the whole, what? The whole creation. As Shona,
you said two powers just now?
yeah. The two powers. One is what we call the power to manifest, which is what we call Vikshepa Shakti. Vikshepa Shakti means it projects as what? It comes out as time, space and every object within time and space. How does it make objects within time and space? Through this intricate arrangement that Surya was explaining yesterday. From what? The tiniest, what were you saying, Surya?
Particle together form atoms, form together molecules and so on. So this is and then you can go up to the big structure.
Okay, so this is how it uses knowledge, its knowledge and power all the way to manifest as the whole universe.
So now modern
So-
physics has come to know this, in fact, the story of the universe. It's an amazing thing which has happened in humanity, that with the knowledge we have of physics, we are able to trace the different steps through which the new universe has gone. And in fact, this is, let's say, one small view of this all knowledge and power, how it has like evolved through all these billions of years from this, what they say, this primordial explosion, and form this complexity and this arrangement and this to come to us human beings. Initially something indifferentiated, very hot, high temperatures. Not yet, there were no atoms yet. Okay? And then slowly all the things became differentiated. And the galaxy began to form, the planets began to form, the atoms were already there, and so on and so on. All the history of life came about. So this is one part of the story.
Okay, so that means that there is a projection, okay? And if everybody in this world who came out, who knew that all that is here is one reality, all knowledge, and which has the power to manifest as many different forms, and we are all what part of that same reality, there would not be any problem. But we don't come with the knowledge of this reality. How, with what knowledge do we come?
Individual.
Yes, I'm this little individual and the world is outside me. Ishvara is somewhere another entity. So that means that this power, there is a second-fold power. One is the power of projection, the other is power of what we call veiling. Veiling is what we call Avarana Shakti. Okay? And because there is Avarana Shakti, when we are born ignorant. We are born ignorant not only about ourselves, but ignorant about everything.
Power of veiling.
Veiling, covering.
Covering.
Is that Maya?
That is the second aspect. The Maya means Shakti, right? Now that Shakti is twofold. Vikshepa Shakti and Avarana Shakti. Yes, power of projection and power of veiling.
What are the two names?
Okay, one is what we call Vikshepa Shakti.
Is it
No,
No.
because this is where I use my knowledge about from Adi Shankaracharya's commentaries to tell you all this. Otherwise, you will not know.
power of projection?
Vikshepa, power of projection and then power of veiling, power of covering. In fact, it's okay.
I was just asking, can we say that this Maya is probably the ability of all knowledge to create anything? So in a way, it's the knowledge of all knowledge?
It is not knowledge of all knowledge, it is power of all knowledge to manifest as Jagat.
If we, like we were taking the watchmaker's example, what
Yes.
would be Maya in that case?
Maya is the maker. Okay, has not only the knowledge. If the maker has knowledge, it's not enough to create the watch. It also needs power. Okay? That means that there are two things needed for any creation to happen. There is knowledge and then there is a power. One is not enough. If you have only power but no knowledge, you can't make anything. But if you have only knowledge but no power, also you can't make anything.
And the material.
Sorry?
And the material. Or what is, you need knowledge and material. And the power on.
Knowledge and material.
Yeah.
Is the same.
In this
Okay.
case it is the same.
Okay.
Right? It is the same.
Power of projection of manifest, how it manifests?
It is how it's
Is that-
manifest. Exactly. And what is the material? Now your question is, okay, it has a power to manifest. What is the material it uses to manifest? What is the material it uses? Itself. do you want to say?
Like a better example than the watchmaker would be the dream.
Yeah.
What I said in the morning in the meditation. In the dream, as the person who is like creating the dream world, what is happening? Okay, you are endowed with a lot of knowledge of what is within the dream world. You know very well what is a sun. This is why you are able to create a sun in the dream. A mountain, rivers and so on. Okay? Right? You are able to project that, to project your knowledge. And here there is another element which is this Avarana Shakti. You may have a lot of knowledge, but everything doesn't come at the same time in a dream. You have much more knowledge than what is manifest in the dream world, right? So it's only partially a partial knowledge which is manifest in the dream world. So this is also Avarana Shakti, another way to speak about Avarana Shakti. And similarly, Ishvara, all knowledge, what he is projecting is not the whole thing. A universe, even though it is immense, it's only one universe. And all knowledge is not manifesting everything at the same time, right? There is only partly it is unfolding and manifesting.
That's not very.
This is another way Swamiji is expecting, our teacher is explaining this Avarana Shakti. So from the standpoint of the individual, as Neema said, this feeling or this Avarana manifests in the form of ignorance. And from the standpoint of Ishvara, who is projecting the whole universe, it is manifest in the form of blocking certain aspect of his knowledge. He cannot make the whole knowledge manifest. It's slowly, bits and pieces.
It's like
Yes.
Yeah. The veiling power can be seen as two things. One is, right, as I said, one is the not knowing my true nature. That is one kind of veiling. Okay? But there is another type of veiling which I was talking about in the morning. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. That's another veiling, because in the program of Ishvara it's all coming, right? It's as unmanifest, which will manifest. But from my own standpoint, I have no idea what is yet coming. Yes?
And Ishvara does know what is happening.
Yes, it is the other side of it, right? Ishvara is not subject to that ignorance. Ishvara is the all knowledge which what? Unfolds it slowly, slowly, slowly for you. From your own standpoint, it is ignorance. From Ishvara's standpoint, is it ignorance? No.
But that works according to the laws.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the laws are what? Manifestation of Ishvara. So Ishvara doesn't have ignorance, right? You have ignorance. So from standpoint of Ishvara, it is a Shakti, Avarana Shakti. Avarana Shakti means capacity to, the power to will. Okay. So this is what he says, that this Maya is that. So everybody is, as Uddhav rightly says, we are all on the other side of Maya, means we have a will. Okay. But Ishvara is what? On the side of a Maya, which is not, which creates the veil for you, but itself is not subject to that veil.
All knowledge.
It is all knowledge. Exactly. Okay? So this is what he says, that I am not subject to that Maya, but keeping that Maya within my mastery, I take another form. Because Maya is a creative power. Everybody is born because of what? Veiling power of the Maya. But I am not born, the Avatara is not born because of the veiling power. It is what? All knowledge taking one form. Not because of ignorance, but what? For a specific purpose. It just comes into being. It takes one form which is not subject to karma and subject to ignorance. Okay? And this is what we call Avatara. Okay? And why would an Avatara come? And that he explains in the next verse. He says, Yada yada hi dharmasya gladirvavati bharata abhyuttanamadharmasya tadatmanam srujamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkrutam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Okay, so this is we will chant, you will chant with me. He says, Yada yada hi dharmasya
Yada yada hi dharmasya
gladirvavati bharata
Gladirvavati bharata
abhyuttanamadharmasya
Abhyuttanamadharmasya
tadatmanam srujamyaham
Tadatmanam sujamyaham
paritranaya sadhunam
Paritranaya sadhunam
vinashaya cha dushkrutam
Vinashaya sushritam
dharma samsthapanarthaya
Dharma samsthapanarthaya
sambhavami yuge yuge.
Sambhavami yuge yuge.
Okay, so he explains that just the literal translation I will read and I will explain. Arjuna, whenever there is a decline in right living and an increase in wrong living everywhere, I bring myself into being, assume a physical body, okay, for the protection of those who are committed to dharma and destruction or conversion of those who follow adharma, and for the establishment of dharma, I come into being in every yuga. Okay? So that means a human being is given a free will. So from that free will, a human being can create what? Either it can create the most beautiful things in life, or it can create what?
Disaster.
Disasters. Right? So that means that this is the power of free will. The power is given to you, and many times what happens is the power corrupts, and absolute power absolutely corrupts. Okay. So therefore, and the person starts to think, right? As person begins to get powerful, the person gets even more deluded, because for a short length of time, what happens? You can manipulate people over whom you have power. Okay. And that becomes even more what? Satisfied. Then what do you want to do? You want to increase your power. Okay? Both for the same people, and then also what? Horizontally and vertically. You want to increase your power. Okay? And that does get even more gratification. Because imagine, for an ego, it is lovely. If I have power over you, you feel scared of me and I can tell you and you will do it. That's for my own short-term convenience, it's lovely. So this is why there are power struggles. Everywhere there is a power struggle. Because human being has this illusion that more power is lovely, because it actually gives you a kind of a control over the other person or group of persons. Okay. So therefore, in fact, what happens is that short-term glory of that power what increases what? Distortion in the long run. You become more atrocious things. You start abusing your power even more. And you start increasing what? The sphere of your power more, and you actually subject more and more people to misery. Okay? So that means your distortion has started with a small thing, and then what? You feed that distortion and it multiplies. It multiplies and it becomes a monster. There is no monster in this world. There is no devil in this world. Right? The devil is what? Inappropriate use of free will. Okay. It is all created by all of us. There is no external devil. Sorry? Yeah, exactly. So many people, no? The world, absolutely. There is so much destruction, there is so much suffering. Okay. Now, there are problems which people like Idi Amin and Hitler and all, we can take care of it. The World War was fought. Okay. The humanity rose against those people and they fought. And somehow they were brought under control. But imagine, so that means that every time Avtara doesn't have to come. Every small person has become powerful and is abusing, doesn't mean that now this Avtara has to come. Because a lot of our problems we ourselves can handle. Okay? But at times those problems become so big that we as human beings may not be capable of handling it. Okay. So that's why what happens is adharma becomes the rule, and dharma, the people who are following dharma, they are endangered and they live out of fear. That is a difficult situation. In fact, it's amazing because even India for a while was going through that situation. When adharma becomes the norm in a society, for dharmic person to live and to survive, it becomes difficult. What kind of a distortion is existing in this society? It's a dysfunctional society. Okay. Then there has to be a correction. And that correction can either take place, right, by human beings itself, or it requires at times some external intervention, because the nature of distortion is so big that every human being is, no human being is capable of doing it. Okay? And this is what calls for what? This is where Avtara is needed. So this is where he says that, what do I come for? Okay? He says, Paritranaya sadhunam, for the protection of those who are committed to dharma, and either destruction or conversion of those who follow a dharma. Okay? For establishment of dharma, I came into being. Okay? You have to, there is a mechanism, because in all knowledge, okay, there is what? Don't think that, most of the time people say, oh, the world is unfair. People, it is a very common thing. Goodness does not pay. Okay? So that means, when we make these statements, what are we saying? What are we saying?
That the world is not good.
Sorry?
The persons are bad.
The persons are bad. Today, in today's world, you can't trust anyone. Very common. Okay? That means that you don't realize or you don't understand what? The working, the presence of this all knowledge. In the short run, people can get away from whatever they do, but in the long run, nobody what? Escapes laws of Ishvara. Nobody. Okay. So this thing that, oh, the adharmis are prospering, maybe in the short run, yes, obviously, right? It's not like tomorrow the so-called. But in the long run, everybody pays. And that is how the laws are. You can get away from what the legal system, but you can't get away from laws of Ishvara. And there is this inbuilt, what? The laws operate in a way that there is an inbuilt corrective mechanism. And this is why you can have confidence in humanity. In spite of all this, there is an inbuilt corrective mechanism, because the world is not, the basis of the world is not nothing, it is all knowledge.
So there is a corrective mechanism.
There is a corrective mechanism.
But inbuilt, as in how would it be inbuilt?
Inbuilt means in the long run. Karma means, as we saw, unseen result have to occur. When, how, where, I don't know. But it has to.
Manifest in different ways.
Different ways,
Not
exactly.
tit for tat.
Not it for that. Absolutely. Okay. So in some ways, what Sarah was asking last time, I mean, it's awful to think like that, but you know, especially when somebody comes very unprivileged, right? With what she was giving an example of a broken arm or something like that, right? So somehow, I mean, we are simplistic, and then we say, oh, in last life somebody must have done this, but that nobody knows, right? But one knows that nothing happens just randomly. That much one knows. We don't know the specifics, but every effect has a cause. And that's why we actually try to trace it. Otherwise, we would not try to, anything happens and you try to figure out why. Why means you are tracing the causes. So therefore, this is where, at times, it is corrected through human beings, and at times some external intervention is necessary. And this external intervention is what we call avtara, to re-establish a certain order, to let go the distortion. Okay? Now, the distortion can be twofold. He first, in the beginning of the chapter, he talked about even this teaching, okay, which is an amazing teaching of the truth, also got distorted. Right? There was the first verse where he says, what does he say? Okay, the second verse. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sakale neha mahata yogo nashtaf parantapa. I've started this lineage of what? Student-teacher parampara, where the knowledge is transferred, but what? Somewhere along the line, what? Distortions occurred. What distortions occurred? The person, without understanding totally the vision, became the teacher and passed on one's own confusion to somebody else. And the other person obviously did not understand, because the teacher did not teach rightly. Not only took on the confusion of the teacher, but also added one's own confusion. In the process, what happens? The confusion gets compounded and a wrong tradition starts. Okay? So the distortions can be in many different forms, in terms of knowledge, in terms of wrong actions, in terms of wrong values. And this corrective mechanism is something that you can see very easily. Okay? 2008-2009, the economic financial crisis. Okay? For a long time after Second World War, what? This modern economics, which was all based on consumerism. The more you consume, more people produce, more there is prosperity. That was the predominant economic model which was followed by all the countries. That led to a disaster. Economic disaster, what? Ecological disaster, because you keep on, in order to keep on consuming more, you need to what? Deplete the natural resources. You create incredible imbalances. Okay? It led to such a crisis point that what? People had to start thinking about development differently. I happened to be in the UN and there was a huge turning point. People from economic development started talking about sustainable development. Okay? So this economic model, which was a norm for a very long time, began to be questioned by all the economists. Where are we heading? What is our idea of prosperity of the country or development of the country? They started adding different indicators to development of a country. For the first time, they started not only looking at economic indicators, they started looking at human index, the environment, ecological indicators, social indicators. The whole vision of development changed. Okay? These are what we call, the crisis is also an opportunity, it's a corrective mechanism. And we can do it. Human beings are also given the intelligence to do it. Because your distortion can go up to a point, right? But after that it becomes unsustainable. It leads to a crisis situation. At that crisis situation, you have to do something about it. You can't just let it go because it has reached that point. Okay? So therefore, human beings do it, but at times human beings are not capable, and this is what we call an avatara, an external. How did Lord Krishna bring about dharma? He had a huge role to play in what? That Duryodhana, without what? Lord Krishna's intervention, would have become what? Duryodhana would have just become the power, it would have had absolute power with no what?
Control.
No control.
He would have done whatever.
Exactly. If a wrong person is at the power, unchecked, it is disaster for masses. Okay? That needed to be checked. And also, the whole tradition, if it had disintegrated, this teaching tradition, right? Then through the teaching of Gita, what did he do?
Is re-established.
Re-established this whole teaching tradition. Important things to do. And this is what is place of an avatar. Comes for a specific tasks and then goes.
What is the direct translation from Advaita? What does it mean?
The direct translation is because you don't have a concept of our Ishvara, and you don't have a translation because you don't have this idea.
There is no word.
Sorry?
There is no word for Advaita.
There is no word for Avatara. Avatara is defined as this all knowledge and all power, that it gives manifestation to one form, which is not normal form, which is subject to, exactly, free of karma and free of ignorance, then that is what we call Avatara. Yes.
Actually, Gita was revealed to Arjuna by Krishna. But at the same time, Sanjay was listening to it and telling it to Dhritarashtra.
Yes.
But there was no change in Dhritarashtra's mindset.
Absolutely.
Because, yeah,
Yes.
he
Absolutely.
टस से मस नहीं हुआ वो. He was on his point that my children and their kingdom.
Absolutely. And this is exactly, people say, oh, if Vedanta is so important, why is it not available to everyone? Yeah, it's not available to everyone because people don't choose to know it, right? You can't blame Vedanta for it.
So at the same time, there are two people who are receiving
this
same knowledge and using it in their own ways.
Right.
I mean, one is ready.
One is ready for it.
And the other one is not. So that means even if you're not ready for it, even if you're exposed to it, it doesn't do anything. And this is why we call what? He said it is Uttamam Rahasya. Until you're ready, right, it will remain a secret even when somebody is telling you. the best of the teacher is telling you, Krishna was telling, and Dhritarashtra was listening, and he remained untouched by it.
Even Hanumana and the horses were listening.
But he knew it, but his children's thing was too great, right? His attachment to his children and thinking that his children were right. Isn't that why he didn't listen to what Krishna said?
See, generally,
He's
forget
blind to
Dhritarashtra. See, what happens is why, I mean, just ask this general question, right? Let's not think about Dhritarashtra. Let's ask a general question. If Vedanta can free you, it is something so profound. Why everybody should be running to Vedanta? But why Vedanta class has 10 people or 15 people and other things as masses like some thousands of people? Why?
He's going to use your good
Work, a lot of work, and
It's a lot of
responsibility.
Yeah.
And
Some people don't understand
It's
why.
a lot of mental gymnastics. You need to really.
And
So that means
again you should be, after listening to it, ready to own up the responsibility of your karma or actions, whatever. That readiness, if
and
you
to
don't
change
have,
the whole attitude, absolutely.
yeah, and otherwise, yeah, Vedanta is great at
it's more
something
easy to
great.
blame
Wow,
others.
I'm ready to clap. Ho gaya.
And sometimes it's easier to take a pill.
Yeah.
From
I
some
feel
guru, and you are free. That's
Yeah,
that is a promising around it.
Yeah, it's easy to take a dip in Ganges and then
Yes.
every 12 years come.
Yeah. So any hard learning, but I think why then we'll apply it to Dhritarashtra. Rashna, why do you think people don't come to Vedanta?
It's a big effort. And they know it.
Effort is harder. But you know, Neema, I think
Awareness.
the effort is even
Later.
why don't they come to begin with? This is all after.
This is all later. The effort, she said mental gymnastics, that's all later.
We don't believe that it can
Because
solve
it's
their
easier to
problem or
blame.
it can.
First they have to
even
know about it.
Yeah, and
Firstly.
you were speaking about this. The most people in the spiritual world they want to feel it. They want to experience it.
It's not tangible.
And it's not tangible, but the promising, all around the gurus are promising.
Okay, what is not
It's
tangible?
not really
That's a very interesting argument. What is not tangible is talking about I. I is the most tangible. It's the only thing you know very intimately.
Easily
And
accessible.
even in the results,
even in a form.
effort and
It requires reprogramming yourself, and it requires taking responsibility, which is much harder than blaming the world or anything external to you and saying it's their fault, not mine. And once you understand that it really is up to you, that requires a whole paradigm shift, which is much, much, much harder.
See, and you don't want to come out of your comfort zone. No?
Yeah.
For so many years, you are in your comfort zone, following certain attitudes, living, surviving,
Our conditioning.
our conditioning,
And
and then now I have to come out of that comfort zone. So it's better I go back.
And the
That can be one
people
reason.
who have the power, for example, and maybe they don't want for you to have that knowledge. I don't know. This is what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, I
Takes
mean, I think
humility
first
too.
of all, you don't have value for this knowledge, right? Because if your mind, as Rashna is saying, so preoccupied with well-being of your son, right? And your well-being of son is defined by his having the kingdom, your mind is occupied by that. That is the end that you want to seek. Nothing else is important for you, right?
That is why he is metaphorically also blind.
Yes, exactly. The blindness.
Absolutely.
He is actually blind, but he is metaphorically blind.
Absolutely. Right? So that means that most of us, we are suffering. For Vedanta, you come to what? Discover freedom from happiness, the freedom from limitations, right? Everybody is feeling limited. Everybody has that sense of void. Everybody has that sense of what? Inadequacy, smallness, limitation and all that. And everybody is trying to free because nobody can stand it. But they are trying to free it through what? Many different means. Because they think the solution lies there.
It probably also takes some humility to say that somebody else might be able to shed some light versus say I and my ego believes that I know it all.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of people
Exactly.
want to refer to someone else and say, show me the way.
Absolutely. And not only they don't go, but they make this argument and they say, you know, I'm a good human being, right? I'm doing everything right. I don't need Vedanta.
I hear this all the time.
Right? So that means, what is the implicit assumption? That Vedanta is only for bad people? Because I'm doing good. Or people who are completely hopeless people who are dropouts?
No, they say it's like midlife crisis, it's like a crutch. I've been told it's like a crutch, you know, and very disdainfully.
You see? Exactly. Right? So that means that this is what we call this comfort zone that we have built. Anything that is, any teaching which shakes that is like threatening. You keep the status quo.
And ironically, people think you're being misled by going down this spiritual
True.
path. You're being misled by first when you're really finding the right path.
Finding the right, absolutely.
And just before coming, I sounds like, my God, you become a real sadhu.
You see?
That's in a derogatory manner, right?
Yeah,
In a very derogatory manner, absolutely.
You just said I
lost your way.
going again to the ashram. I think in another 2 years you'll start living there.
So you see what I mean? That Rashna, does it answer your question that if you're not ready, it will not interest you. I mean, even
That's
if
what
you
it's-
hear it,
Yeah, it doesn't attract
ready
you.
to hear it.
it doesn't,
attract
it does not resonate.
Yeah.
Because your priorities are totally different. And your value system is totally different. What you're looking for in life, even though it's happiness, but you're looking for it through something else, which you think is the most important thing for you. So this seems like useless.
That's why you certainly have to have done something good to be able to come and try to learn it.
Absolutely. In this whole, that's a very, very good thing. In this whole Shastra, when they say that the time that Jiva comes to Vedanta Shastra is a huge turning point in life of a Jiva. Huge. Because everything that was taken as given is all being questioned. Okay? And questioned for discovering something so much more beautiful, and then the vision which is so, it really blesses. Okay? Because it has many different aspects. It answers some of the most fundamental questions about existence, but it also tells you how to change yourself as a person and live with certain values and certain understanding, and how to become bigger as a person. So many things are all taken care of at the same time. Gratitude towards Ishvara, understanding your place in the scheme of things, becoming a responsible human being, understanding how the world works. I mean, so many things all at the same time. It's complete. So many dimensions to it. It's not unidimensional. And that from that point on, the Jiva has a different direction. You can never be the same person once you have listened to Vedanta. You cannot be. Even if you forget in this life, after 5 years, the karma will to bring you back. Somewhere, somehow, something will again connect you to this knowledge. This is not the laws of Ishvara. Because human birth is meant for moksha, one's own freedom. You have used your brain to its highest capacity when you have known the truth, or when you know the realities accurately. And you're not living from your own believed world, with all these different belief systems that I have. One has
causal body eventually reach moksha?
No, the causal body is never need. So, you need a physical and subtle body to do the inquiry. The causal is potential. Causal has no form. Please understand, it's a potential. Okay? So, in order for any inquiry to take place, you need human or equivalent birth. Right? But in that birth, you actually can understand you are also not the causal, you are the final. All that we will see later. But it is true that you can understand totality, the total vision accurately. The human or equivalent birth. Equivalent means the form can be different, but any in some other ways, but it has free will and it has this capacity like human being does. Okay. So this is where we saw that he explains what is avatara and why does it come. Then you think that your avatara is somebody who is so special because the avatara does not have ignorance about the reality. Okay? Then the next verse he says, any person, any one of you, right, can know the reality and become exactly me. And that is what, that is what is said. That a jnani means a wise person who understands the reality is equal to me. And that is how that we will see next time. So the whole teaching of Gita is not that you take one Krishna or an Ishvara as some huge entity and you are always what? This little small entity. In fact, the whole teaching of Gita is there is an equation between Ishvara and Jiva. That is a big equation. Ultimately, they enjoy the same truth. That is something big that will come.
What is yuga?
Yuga is different side calculations. Yeah. So I think like 12 months make a year. So there are some calculations which some amount of time.
432,000,000 billion years.
Will make a yuga.
Yes, they said Kali Yuga.
Yeah.
Treta Yuga,
Dwapar Yuga.
In Treta Yuga is the yuga where Ramayana took place.
And Dwapara is when
this Krishna avatar.
So from time to time. So that is what it is.
No, he's in every yuga.
Yeah, every yuga. Yeah,
Every cycle.
in every cycle, in that area.
And in this current creation, Krishna was the last of Kala, right?
Yeah. So now they say Kalki, but all that
I
we
don't
don't
read
know.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What we
Buddha
know
also
and
they
say,
Yeah.
what we already know.
After Krishna they say Buddha. No?
Some
Yeah,
say,
that-
no, some
Some-
mark him as Avtara, some don't. That's a question.
Okay. But whether somebody is an avatara or not is another question altogether,
Exactly.
because there are so many people who claim that they are avataras. But you need to understand that we don't know, right? The only thing is that this is the concept of avatara, that one form can come. That's all. That's all you need to know. But more important than that is what is Lord Krishna saying in the next verse, that any normal person born of ignorance can also become exactly the same as me. That is very interesting. Okay? And how, that we will see next. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamada